This video was published by mbkpinternational.com. In this video, we're going to talk about the XPC19 Pro paper cutter, and if you get an F1 sensor fault. F1 sensor fault has to do with this grid here, this safety grid, basically these holes here on both sides. And we'll just do an example for you when you do a cut. And we'll have the cameraman put his hand in here, and it just basically causes the fault. So that's F1 sensor fault. If something basically the cutter thinks there's something in here, so it stops. It doesn't want the blade to come down for safety issues. Whether there is or not, but it thinks there is. So we're going to raise it back up. And we're going to go over, there's a couple things. If you look over here, you'll see there's a green light on right now. And when I put my hand in here, it turns to red. And when it's red, it will give the F1 sensor fault. The only time it's not going to give it is when it's green. If there's no light at all, no red or green, then it usually has something to do with this plug right here. This plug here is plugged into the side of the sensor board, and the other end goes to your motherboard. And I'll go to that. And that's one thing you want to check. If you have no, and it could be an intermittent problem, so you could have lights, and then something could happen. The lights could go out. So if you have an infrared sensor fault, look to see if the lights are on red or green or what. You know what I mean? Or if there's no lights off. There's no lights at all at times, then it may have to do with that plug. And if you get into this electronics corner, you want to unplug this from power. I'm going to be very careful. I'm just going to turn it off, but even with it turned off, there is some residual power going to this. So if you mess with this, you want to unplug it from power. The other end of that is this right here. It's P7, I believe. But these numbers can change, but right now that's what it is right there. It's that right there. With that one unplugged, and I'll turn it on, as you can see, there will be no light at all. And it's either this end unplugged, if that end was unplugged, or just partially unplugged, you know what I mean? Just slightly where it's not getting contact anymore. It would give the same thing where you wouldn't have any light. Again, yours could be like an intermittent where it's kind of connected, but it's so it could be going on and off, so you just need to watch for that. I'm going to turn this back off and plug it. So the one thing, if you have that issue, the one thing I would do is I'd unplug this. I would check to make sure none of these three wires are backing out of this plug, that's all plastic up to that plug, no wire backing out. And I would just plug it back in and make sure you get all three prongs. If you miss a prong, it's going to be an issue. And I would do the same thing on this end. I would just unplug it from this end and check it, make sure no wires are backing out of it, make sure no wires are backing out of this plug, and then just plug it back in. A lot of times it just reconnects, gives it another good connection. Now again, that's an unlikely one actually, but that's if you don't have no power. Okay, another thing is this is the data wire here. This basically comes out of the side of this board and goes into the side of this board over here. It goes across the electronics department and just plugs in there. It just goes from board to board. And if one of these are unplugged, I need to turn this cutter back on. As you can see, it's a green light. As soon as I unplug this, it would be red all the time. So if you got a red all the time, it would just give you instant F1 sensor fault. You just push these buttons, so you let the paper push come to a stop. But as soon as I touch these two buttons, it's just instant F1 sensor fault. That's because the red lights. So if you got a red light on all the time, you want to check these data wires here. Make sure I would unplug them and plug them back in. Let me turn this off. And just make sure they're plugged in good on both sides. Again, there's your other one. I would check those because that's what would cause it. Make sure the wire ain't backing out of the plug or anything. Make sure everything looks good on this wire here. Make sure there's nothing coming out where you see any bare wires or anything like that. Another possibility, and this is kind of a long shot too, is you just gotta have a bad motherboard. This is your motherboard, and you just need to replace the motherboard if it's and a lot of times that's if it's doing it erratically. Sometimes it does, sometimes it don't. Sometimes that's an issue with the motherboard. It could also be this board right here. Could be bad, and it could also be the board on the other side. So, but when we replace any one of those boards, we usually replace them in pairs. So you just replace both sides, and we do have videos for that. So there's that. Those boards could be bad. The motherboard could be bad. One of the wires could be unplugged. We went over all that. You know what it is. Like this one, the red would be on all the time. If it was the other one that went to the motherboard, it'd be no light. But again, that could be intermittent, off and on, no light, because it could be kind of plugged in and kind of getting connection and kind of not. It could be off and on that way. But the most likely problem is you just have something in the way here. The person could actually put his hand in here and accidentally stop it with an F1. If you got anything, anybody else actually, I've seen it to where people, you got a person using it and someone over here is like this with their hand on the thing here like this, and that would cause an F1 sensor fault. So you just want to make sure nobody's in this, you don't have anything in there. And then another issue is these actual, here's a stick, these are actually just stickers that stick on here. And these windows, like if you have it smeared dirt or grease here, or a piece of tape over this, these holes, they get blocked in any way slightly at all, it thinks there's something in here. So you just need to make sure these are nice and clean, clear. Clean it with something, you know, just get a wet paper towel and just clean it. Make sure they're on both sides, that they're clean, and there's nothing on those holes, because those holes are what senses it. It goes infrared, it goes back and forth and senses it. So make sure both sides, all the holes are clean. There's also another thing you want to look for. Some people don't take, we usually do it, but sometimes we forget. All these stickers, they have and some of you can't see it as easy, but they have a film over it. So if yours still has the film, take that thing off, because that would perfectly clean it right there and give you a nice clean windows there. And here's another thing. If you look at this, you can see how clear that window is, how you can see right through it. And the way you can see it easiest is you can see when you see light, and you take off that panel from the other side and you see light through it there, and you can see how clear it is. And you can see how clear these windows are. They're just clear see-through. But if you notice in this video here, this one's tinted. You can see the tint to it. We had a problem with they were putting some tinted on it, and that's why I use this cutter, because it's tinted. So if you have some tinted windows, there isn't a possibility the tinted windows is causing the problem. And you just peel this sticker off, which I'll do now, and I'll just show you. It's not a hard thing to do. Also, you know, you could try this first if you have that. It had that on it too, and you peel it off and see if that takes care of it. A lot of them didn't have the problem with the tinted, but the tinted window did cause problems on some of them. So it kind of just depended on your version of motherboard, what you had, whether you were getting problems with it or not. So, but if you do have tinted, first make sure that protective film is off. You know, sometimes you got to pick at the side here to get it started, and you peel it off. Again, a lot of times we took them off before we sent them out, so it's just check it, see, make sure. But if you still can't get it, if you still have an F1 sensor fault, and you have one of these tinted window ones, you can just peel it off. And you can see how tinted the windows are there. And you could even just take them both off if you wanted to, because we can always just send you new stickers. It's not a big deal. And a lot of times that will take away the problem. But first I would try cleaning it, see if that film is on it. If it is, pull it off. And if you have tinted ones, definitely take those off if you're still having the problem. But then you just put this one back on. It's pretty simple. You just got to line up the holes. You just got to be careful lining up the holes. So I'm just take this backing off here. And this is if we sent you a new one. And all you got to do is line up these holes before you get it stuck down good. I'm going to have the camera guy back up a little bit so I can see this. It's better to have this open in the back so the light can come through, because you can see it better when that happens. But you basically want to make sure all the holes are lined up as good as possible on this. Just don't let it completely stick until you get it lined up. I think I got it. And that's all you do. That's all it takes there. Let's see, now it's got clear windows on both sides. Any of that could cause an F1 sensor fault. And if it's a motherboard and you have to replace that, we have a video on that. Or if it's these boards here and you have to replace that, we have a video on that. But those are the things I would check first. First, just check, make sure no one's getting their hand in here while you're during a cut. Or anything else is hanging in here. And there's one thing I forgot to mention, and I'll mention it now. I'm going to turn this on. If you're cutting large stacks of paper that hang way out, like you could have a stack this high, and it could be hanging out here, and it will be hanging here and in front of this window here, and it could be causing, or like right at the edge of it or something. Sometimes it hits it and sometimes it doesn't. There's a disable here on the side. This button here, you push it and it disables the bottom, usually the bottom one or two ones, just depends on it. An earlier version was just the bottom one, the newest version is both these. So now neither one, still green light on both these. But when you get to these others, it goes to red, or this one, or this one. So that just disables these bottom two, so you can cut a big long stack of paper that hangs past the end. Because if you got something like that, you're not going to be able to cut it if it's triggering these windows. You got to turn off the bottom portion of the grid with this button. Now I'll turn it back on, and now you're going to activate those again. Go back the other way. Now you don't. So that's what that's for. So you want to check that too. I think I covered everything. Just need to check all these things to see what's causing your F1 sensor fault, because all that is just this thing thinks there's something getting in here for safety. It does an F1 sensor fault and stops the blade. This video was published by mbkpinternational.com.